Thank you for Sedermeradagen to allow me to come here today. It was actually Sedermeradagen who took us to Spotlight back in 2014. And since then we made move to First North Premier and then now on Stockholm main market. Market cap is today around 800 million Swedish. And we actually were listed at Spotlight as a research company in neuroscience. And since then we have built a clinical pipeline very fast and have now even products in phase 3. Does this work? No. Okay. So just a reservation for forward-looking statement. There will be a few in this presentation. This slide shows the investment case as I see it. And it can be put into 3 groups. At the top you have a program for Tesomet, which we are developing for eating disorders. And we think that we can create significant value within these orphan indications ourselves in a very short time with a very decent investment. And that's why we find it so interesting. And then on the top of that, we have in group 2 additional late-stage clinical programs. One is in phase 3 for obesity with our partner Medix in Mexico. And here we're going to have results within the next 8 weeks. Below you have NS2359, which we are developing for cocaine addiction. It is an investigator-driven study and is financed by US grants. And here again we expect to have intermediate data within the next 8 weeks. And then we have what I think is a very interesting technology platform. And this platform fuels our early stage clinical pipeline quite fast right now. The first program entered into phase 1 clinical trials for ataxia and tremor this spring. We have another program for neuropathic pain, which we plan to start phase 1 clinical trials in spring next year. And then Boehringer Ingelheim, our partner, German partner, selected a clinical candidate this summer where they aim of starting a phase 1 clinical trials for schizophrenia, probably at the end of next year. So the preclinical time takes about 18 months. And then we have several partnerships, and actually we have made 3 spin-outs since we started. One is Cadent Therapeutics, which is based in the United States and is financed by a venture capital firm called Atlas Ventures. And then we have 2 program companies now soon on Spotlight. One is in the Asia of Pharma, which listed 1.5 years ago, and then Scandion Oncology, which will be listed, have first day of trading on Spotlight tomorrow. So that's going to be very interesting to see. This is a more traditional presentation of the pipeline. On top you have Tesofensine, which is in phase 3 for obesity. Then you have Tesomet, which we are developing for eating disorders. And then 2359 for cocaine addiction in phase 2 also. And finally CAT1883 for ataxia and tremor. And this is a motor function disease. So tremor is the shaking with hands, typically what you see very common. And ataxia is a very rare disease. But very severe. The Tesofensine is most advanced, but I will start with describing our key asset, Tesomet, which is a combination of Tesofensine and metoprolol. Tesofensine is a new chemical entity controlled entirely by Saniona. Metoprolol is an old AstraZeneca compound, which has been used in millions of patients over the years. We have complete new patents around this fixed dose combination, which will provide protection until 2036. And we think, because Tesofensine has shown very strong weight loss, that it can be used both in metabolic diseases, such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, and we even have animal data showing that it is relevant in NASH. But we are developing it for eating disorders because we can get much faster to the market at a much lower cost. And the mechanism of action of tesofensine, which is the component that's driving this, the primary mechanism is reduction in craving for food, sugar, and fats, and then it also reduces appetite. And this is also relevant for eating disorders. And we are developing it for 2 indications right now: Prader-Willi syndrome, which is a genetic disease, and where we are in phase 2, and then hypothalamic obesity, where we plan to start a phase 2 study in Rigshospitalet in Denmark, the major teaching hospital in Copenhagen, early next year. So said, Prader-Willi syndrome is a genetic disease. The most pronounced symptom is that the patient is extremely hungry all the time. So they beg for food, they steal food, they go into the garbage cans at night. Over time, they become life-threatening obese. And there's a significant medical need to help them with this extreme hunger, hyperphagia, we call it. And then also help them with getting a weight loss. There are actually no products today which can help them. Analysts estimate that the market could be $3 billion, despite that it's a very few patients. Hypothalamic obesity is a little bit the same story. In this case, it's not a genetic disease. It is acquired by an accident, or by a stroke, or by, very commonly, by a very rare benign brain tumor. And when you then take a surgery and take it out of the brain, then you have the risk of damaging the appetite center, and then they have this extreme hunger and takes on a lot of weight in a very short time. Analysts estimate that the market is smaller than Prader-Willi syndrome, but still very interesting, primarily because there are fewer patients. We have proof of concept from a phase 2 study in Prader-Willi syndrome we did last year. And then we also know that a compound with a similar mechanism of action has proven to be effective in hypothalamic obesity. This product provided a significant increase in blood pressure and is no longer on the market. We believe that we can develop tesomet in these 2 indications for a total investment of $30 to $40 million from where we stand today until market approval. And this is done by the fact that most companies who have been active in this field has made phase 2 study of 10 to 30 patients. And American biotech company a couple of years ago had a program in phase 3 in the United States, which was just 100 patients over 6 months treatment. And this was a phase 3 study which would be approved for market approval in the US. This compound will not reach the market because it was too toxic. They kind of way showed how we should develop this product in this indication. And we are right now in phase 2 in teenagers with Prader-Willi syndrome. And we have the results in the first quarter next year. Then we think we will take a regulatory advice with FDA and EMA here in Europe. And based on that, we will decide what's the next step. Most likely, it could go for phase 3 maybe, but most likely we will make some additional dose finding, which means we could start phase 3 in 2020 and then launch the product in 2021-22. And then we start another study here at Rigshospitalet for hypothalamic obesity here early next year. And this will be a double-blind study and will qualify for phase 3. We think that dose range finding will be much easier in this patient group, and therefore the timeline could actually bypass the Prader-Willi development with this indication. Importantly, we are having the opportunity to make this product ready for phase 3 in 2 different indications next year. So this slide shows the result from the proof of concept study we did in Prader-Willi syndrome last year. And there was a treatment of total of 9 patients. 6 patients got tesomet and 3 patients got placebo. We saw a significant reduction in both this hunger, hyperphagia, and in weight loss. Hyperphagia went from a base score of 10, this question like how many times have the patient stolen food the last 2 weeks, and then they get the number of points. and then they had a baseline of 10, and as you can see, over the 12 weeks of treatment, it completely disappeared. It went to 0. There is also a reduction in the in the placebo group, but then it comes back up again. And this correlates with a weight loss of 5% after 8 weeks in the treatment group, and 6.75% for those who completed the study. Whereas that nothing really happened in the placebo group. When you see from a safety point of view, then there was no severe adverse events in this trial. We did see some adverse events, as you always do. And those we saw were primarily CNS related, and it arrived very late in the study. We learned from this study that we should use a much lower dose in these patients. It happens that half-life of the drug in the blood was double as long as normal patients, and we have tested in a lot of patients. And that means that we had a too high dose at the end, and then some of the patients started to have problems. But you can see hyperphagia went down immediately in this trial. So the product is clearly working. These are fantastic data. These patients stop stealing food. These patients stop going in the garbage cans. They don't talk about food outside meals any longer. They don't get upset when denied foods under meals. And they're losing weight. And Prader-Willi's patients, they don't do this by themselves, that's for sure. So it's clearly working. And then we have this technical problem, getting the dosing right in these patients. We know that the blood concentration should be much lower, can be much lower when it is offensively effective. And that's what we're going for now, in teenagers in a lower dose. This slide shows how analysts come to the market of $3 billion. So there's very few patients, 8,000 patients in the US, 13,000 in Europe, but you can get very high prices in orphan indications. It is so that, that if there's less than 10,000 patients in the US in orphan indication, then most of the product get $200,000 per patient per year or more, very often. So analysts estimate for this drug that it could be up to 120 to 150,000 in US and somewhat lower in Europe. So it's very dependent on price when we're talking dollar terms. So we see a significant market, and there is no products approved today, and we can get there for a low investment and fast. Phase 3 studies is just 100 patients, 6 months in 6 months in treatment, and then you're done. And we can also even commercialize itself. I spoke with the commercial director of the American biotech company, how many they were planning the other day, and they were only expecting having about 20 sales reps to cover the US market, because all these patients are covered by specialists in US and also here in Europe. So this is something we can do. This slide put a strategic overview. So in the United States, Europe, and Japan, the key markets for orphan indication, here we intend to develop it for Prader-Willi syndrome and hypothalamic obesity. Outside, we intend to develop it for obesity only. And we have actually a partner in Mexico, which are developing tisofensin as a standalone therapy right now, but also intend to develop tisomet for obesity there. And the deal structure here is that they have the rights in these 2 countries. Then they finance the phase 3 studies, and we get double-digit royalties on their sales when they get the products on the market. And then we retain the rights to our program in the rest of the world, including the exclusive right to use their data. So this is a way for us to finance a late clinical studies and bring it into other markets. And these data could probably be used in most of South America and with some bridge studies to Asia region, for instance. So they have started a phase 3 study in August last year, comprising 372 patients. And the study has been completed. Last patient has had its last visit in October. And they are now closing down the database and cleaning it up. And then we expect to provide top-line data from this phase 3 study within the next 8 weeks or sometimes in December. The study design is very similar to a phase 2 study we did in Denmark several years back. And It was also a 6-month study. It was 200 patients. We had 3 doses and then placebo. And what you can see here is from this slide that there's a nice dose-dependent weight loss in this patient in this trial. Also, you can see that the purple curve here is here the patient had achieved a weight loss of 11.2% after 24 weeks of treatment. And this trial was actually extended in an open-label fashion, as we call it, for another 24 weeks, and then the patient had lost 14 to 15%. And this is the double of what is seen in any other products on the market today, for instance, in the US. And it's very well tolerated. Given those robust results, we think there's a good likelihood that Medic's phase 3 studies will be successful. We have tested it in a number of indications previously together with Boehringer Ingelheim. And it has been tested in Parkinson's diseases, in Alzheimer's diseases, before actually it was realized that it should be used for obesity. So it has been tested in 1,600 patients, and in 13 phase 1 studies, and 5 phase 2 studies, and it's now phase 3. So we know a lot of this compound. And the Tesomet, the combination product, which we are moving in eating disorders, has been tested in 3 phase 1 studies and in 2 phase 2 studies so far. So it's a very large data package. Just a summary of this is a 140-page document. There's a lot of data. We know much more than you probably will see in other biotech companies when they have clinical programs at this stage. Then a little bit about cocaine addiction product for 2359. So there is no products available today to treat cocaine addiction. There's about 1.1 million patients like addicts in US and a similar number in Europe. The total market is could be estimated to $1.2 billion if you just use the pricing used in opiates. This product, we have animal data, and we have also studied from a phase 1 in humans, which indicate that this product could be very useful for treatment of cocaine addiction. And the American scientists who are driving this, they're very excited about it. They think that this is the best chance they've ever had to do something for these addicts. They started a study of 18 cocaine addicts, and they're treated for 8 weeks. And then they will measure in the urine whether they can find any cocaine or metabolites of cocaine in the urine during the last 2 weeks of the study. And if there is nothing, then the patient would be considered as abstinent and getting out of the situation. They have informed that they will perform an intermediate study when 50 patients has completed the study. And 50 patients are in the trial now, number 50. And we expect also to be able to provide results from this trial in this year. And if successful, it could be potential the first product in the market. We are not financing this. It's done by US grants, but we have kept all commercial rights to the compound, including their data. So a bit about our platform. We have a very interesting platform, which I said, fueling our early stage pipeline. SAN711 on the top is in a late preclinical development. We finalized the last studies by now. And we expect to start phase 1 clinical studies next spring, the coming spring. It's a complete new concept for neuropathic pain. It's a chronic pain. It's a patient group which is wildly underserved today. Total market is $6 billion, despite that they're not really working. This is a new concept working in the spinal cord, in the control center for pain signaling to the brain. And we hope that it can provide new times for these patients. Then Boehringer Ingelheim, we have talked about that. Then we have an interesting program for inflammatory bowel diseases. We have made significant progress during the year, and we see a lot of interest in the industry. And we are maybe soon can come up with some news about that in relation, not to partnering, but in relation to the selection of potential candidate. We have a lot of partnerships, as you can see, and also in our clinical programs. And as an illustration here, then Boehringer Ingelheim, when they selected the clinical candidate this summer, in July, we got 42 million crowns from them in a milestone payment. This deal is we are entitled up to 90 million euros in milestone payments, of which we have got 9 so far. And then we get royalties on product sales. So it's a very standard biotech pharma deal. And this has been a part of our strategy since we started. I could say that there's Bio-Europe in Copenhagen these days. It's one of the second largest event in our industry. There are more than 10,000 people there from the industry. And in this meeting, we had 80 meetings in 3 days. And we had to turn down more than 100. We had to call in additional people. So there's a lot of interest in Saniona right now from the industry. And this is because we have, part of it is because we have many programs. Of course, Tesofans, in which we are developing for obesity in the rest of the world, there are many regional pharmaceutical companies like Medix who are very interested. Then there are also many companies interested in Prader-Willi syndrome, but here we are not interested to talk because we want to develop it ourselves. But then there are the Sedermeradagen, where we have a candidate for neuropathic pain, complete new concept. There we get a lot of interest. And also in the inflammatory product from IK program for inflammatory bowel disease, it's Crohn's diseases and colitis, there is also a lot of interest. So this is why we see so much interest. We actually needed to double the number of people we expected at this meeting. So here you see the financials, and you can see on the top line, if you go to the right column, then we had generated income at the end of second quarter of 156 million crowns since we started. And this is income, non-dilutive income we get through partnerships. It's financing a significant part of the company. Actually, since we started, we have just burned 100 million crowns. And this is prior to we got the 42 million crowns from Boehringer Ingelheim in July. So we have come a long way, and this money, of course, we can invest in our own activities. And we have raised more money this way than we have done through the stock market so far. So summing up a bit with the inflection points in the coming period, we are going to report results from 5 ongoing clinical trials within the next 4 to 5 months. I have never been in that situation before. I actually don't. I think that I don't think there are any in our peer group on Stockholm person who can present that such a news flow in the coming period. So it's going to be very interesting. So first, on our key asset, we have phase 2 studies coming out. Results from phase 2 studies in Prader-Willi patients for teenagers. Then we will take the regulatory advice, and then we expect to start a phase 2 study in dose range finding in that indication. And then we're going to start also a phase 2 study in hypothalamic obesity at Rigshospitalet in Copenhagen in January. Then on the 2 other assets in group 2, then we have phase 3 data within the next 8 weeks, which could lead to filing of a new drug application in Mexico in next year, and the royalty income to Saniona in the time to come. And then 2359, where we have interim data for cocaine addiction. And on the platform, then we expect that Cadence Therapeutics will report results from their phase 1 study in the coming period, and then announce what they are going to do in ataxia and in tremor. And then we start Sedermeradagen for phase 1 study in chronic pain and itching in spring. And then given the interest we have right now from partners, then fairly optimistic that at least over the next 12 months we can see some additional collaboration coming up. Thank you for your attention.